Hey, gals, guys, and otherwise, this is Jonathan O. Roselion.
And I am Noah, also known as Polyphonic, and you're listening to Horns and Wings, the podcast where we talk about Saga and fine cheeses.
I thought for 1 second you're going to actually say the thing. We're going to be talking about issue 7. It's a classic. If I had to summarize it in one word, it would probably be like, Mom. Let's jump in.
All right, so here's a little peek behind the curtain. I say that every time. Jonathan just called dibs on summarizing the first scene right before we started recording, like a goddamn asshole. So he can go right ahead.
I just want that yellow sky. But first, really quick, this cover is so good.
Oh my god, this might be. Like, this is in contention for my favorite cover.
Yeah, okay, so this is how dumb I am, really quick, as if I needed more podcast evidence of my stupidity. It never occurred to me that those wings, very similar to the horns in the background in the first issue, never occurred to me that those wings were the wings of landfall soldiers. I always, like, for some reason.
No,
for some reason, I just have this disconnect.
No, I'm the exact same. It's kind of just abstract wing textures.
Yeah, honestly, in my head, like, if you zoomed out, he was like standing on a beach with a bunch of birds flying past or something. But yeah, it's again, that's so weird. I guess because we associate wings and horns with other things.
By the way,
great podcasts.
By the way, for those of you who are listening and don't have this cover handy, it's a
thank you.
Salmon, a beautiful like pastel salmon background color. Mm-hmm. And then we have Marco with wings at his knees and a sword in his hand, covered in blood up to his nose. And just looking like stone cold and ruthless.
Yep. Oh, look at that blood dripping off his chin.
Yeah.
Oh, man. And like, oh my gosh, I just noticed the feathers stuck to the blood on his horns. This is so good.
Yeah.
This is... And just honestly, just earlier, I just like covered him up and just looked at the salmon alone for the background color. Perfect.
Fiona Staples in color, man. But yeah, we open
go
the page
right into an equally amazing color because we have this gorgeous yellow sky above these beautiful fields, and there's a horned boy and his amazing dog who also has horns.
A horned boy and his horned boy.
and I've never immediatly wanted to own a pet more. I'm talking about the dog. Not the boy. And there's the voiceover that says I should rewind for a second. I won't get into this yet because we'll summarize the scene first, but just know that it is a beautiful yellow sky and it's such a striking splash. But we realize very quickly that boy is Marco, and this is a flashback. And it's him and his younger parents here in this field, and they're on Wreath, the moon he grew up on, and the voiceover is explaining things even though they're talking in blue, and we see that Marco's dog is named Rumfer, which is
such a good dog name. Oh my god,
I'm offended that I have not gone out and bought a dog just to name it Rumfer.
I have so many Saga dog names in my back pocket, by the way. I really want to get a small dog and a big dog and name them Goose and Friendo.
Oh my gosh. Spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers. There's characters that exist.
But yeah. I'm so... There's so much to get to in this series. Yeah. I'm so pumped for everyone. Anyway, so he runs up to his parents and... his mother does a spell where she cuts her hand and the blood falls on the ground, and suddenly there are these like ghostly holograms of a crazy battle happening in this field. And it's of course horns v wings, and the horns are using sort of ancient magical weapons, and the wings are using like mini guns, and they have like all the decked out armor, and And there's Marco watching all this horrific violence and is clearly traumatized by it. And the voiceover says his parents didn't say a word, but the point of their lesson was clear. Never forget the countless heroes who sacrificed so much, and more importantly, never forget those evil fucks with the wings.
Oh,
And that is the end of that scene. And we are getting the beginnings of Marco's brainwashing here.
yeah.
And it seems to be largely his own mother, who's the father seems pretty reluctant throughout the scene, or at least just like, just putting up with it.
Yeah.
And we've seen references earlier to the mother very much being the one he's trying to impress with his and the most afraid to admit that he's not in the war anymore. So we're getting a bit more of that dynamic, but it is a very, very this is our first flashback, or we've gotten a flashback before?
I believe it is our first flashback.
Okay, cool. Well, it's a good one, and I want to know where the fuck Rumfer is. Noah,
What did I do with Rumfer?
release the Rumfer cut. That's what I say. But yeah, it just honestly, if you can at some point, just go open. If you have this issue already, go open the book and just stare at this horizon, because also it has like the big white planet in the background.
Yeah,
on the horizon.
I love the planet on the horizon is just I will never get sick of that imagery. It's used in sci-fi all the time, but it's way more kind of nuanced here, and I love it.
Yeah, which again, like why you do a comic, we don't get just plain yellow skies in live action.
Yeah.
It is again, and it's just such a small, interesting, non-obvious choice that makes the scene so much more impactful.
And the whole palette of the scene grows from this. Like the whole palette is kind of these warm, nostalgic. Like it almost feels like it could be shot on like 88 millimeter film or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
with this yellow tone, it's very. It does a good job of flashing back without doing the like, oh, it's in black and white, or it's like it's color graded. Like it's just the palette that Staples chooses evokes the past and memory.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Anything else you want to say about this scene?
I just think it's really interesting as we see more, kind of just in terms of, I love character design and like kind of world design, and the way that the more we see of Wreath, the more, or Wreath, yeah, it is Wreath, right?
Yeah.
I always forget which is which. That the more we see of Wreath, the more we understand. There's a lot of kind of feudal Japan undertones, which I think is really interesting and just kind of a really beautiful aesthetic, but it's also not necessarily explicit in this. It's just kind of implied that it's kind of like feudal Japan.
Yeah.
And then that's so
For sure.
jarring when contrasted with the wings.
Yeah.
The other point that I really liked, this panel during the battles of the one where it says never forget the countless heroes who sacrificed so much. The fucking shot of that is so intense. It's this person, and they've got deer antlers, and they're holding a katana, and like half their face is melted off. But I think this is really interesting because I think it's super like gross and hard to watch, hard to look at. Like it looks like very like visceral, but not in like not in a way that you sometimes see comics like Preacher or something like that do gore, where it's like super over the top. It's like, if you actually look at it, it's not that graphic, but it feels really graphic and evokes that without needing to stew in gratuitous gore, which I think is just great.
Yeah, and I also like that in that same panel, the guy who's scarred is holding a sword very, very similar to the one that Marco used, and that blue sword spell that he used later. And I like to think that that played some role in, his choice of weapon, or his just his trajectory in some way, especially when it's paired with that never forget the countless heroes voiceover. So we're getting some very interesting origin stories here. I'm liking it.
Also, Marco's face in that last panel is just so good.
Yeah,
Like,
very.
little angry Marco
Yeah.
being indoctrinated.
So you're taking over this next scene, and I have
All right.
the most faith in you. You're gonna kill it.
So now we get to cut from traumatic backstory to awkward sitcom. With Hazel's narration, we go, so yeah, that was then. And we cut to the rocket ship tree with this kind of planet in the background that's all like cracked and falling apart. Wonder what that's about. And and we see in case you forget, because it has been a while, if you listen to the episode in between, where we left off last issue was Marco's parents appeared on the rocket ship tree. So now we have kind of Marco trying to introduce his parents, who presumably hate the wings, to his winged wife and baby, and shenanigans ensue. There's a lot of yelling, but Marco says, Marco's mom reveals that she didn't kill Isabel. Thank God for that. She just vaporized Isabel to the nearest planet.
Whew.
And so Marco, yeah, I don't know what I would do if Isabel died. So Marco grabs the helmets that his parents are wearing, which we learned they're called crash helms, and they seem to be some kind of cool teleportation thing. And he jumps into this portal, and his mother follows after him, jumping to go get his babysitter, Isabel. Meanwhile, man, this is a long scene.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
Convenient that I picked scene number 1.
Meanwhile, we get Marco's dad and Alana, and it's clear that Marco's dad isn't quite as like kind of hate-filled about the wings, but there's clearly some unpleasantness there, and they kind of walk around through the ship. They start to have conversation about politics, but then Alana's just like, I'm not discussing this, and just kind of leaves. But then Marco's dad just asks, like, is the baby normal? And is trying to approach the baby, and it seems like he's trying to be kind of like earnest, but Alana is probably like reasonably so not really trusting him. And then she tells the ship to tie him up, so it ties him up in some vines. And I think that's where this scene ends.
Yeah. Vine ship. I love it. There's a lot I want to talk about with this scene, because there's some cool stuff.
Yeah, this is a big scene. I tried to do it quickly because I figured we're going to go into detail here, but it is a long scene.
Yeah. So first off, I love Alana's face in that second panel of the scene where Marco is just pleasantly introducing her.
This whole thing, like everything about this, like Marco's face too, everything about this is so like sitcom, like the in-laws show up unsurprised, like unannounced trope, and I adore it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Alana has just the most like just embarrassed, stunned, like, get me the fuck out of this situation.
It's also worth noting through all of this, Alana is just wearing a towel and nothing else.
Yeah.
She's kind of got the like record scratch. You're probably wondering how I found out how I ended up in this situation.
Oh, and then after the introduction, by the way, it's do we want to say Clara or Clara for the mother? Okay.
I think. I mean, Alana would seem to think it's Clara.
There we have Alana, and it's spelled like Laura, but with a K. But I'm going to go with Clara for now, because that's easier to remember and say and not feel like a doofus.
Now I'm doubting myself. I think it might be Clara.
God damn it. Clara it is. So Clara is Marco's mom, and Barr is his dad, and I love that name. That's a rad name.
Yeah. Do we learn this yet in this issue? Or...
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we did. Okay, cool.
That's the only reason that I retained. I'm so bad with proper nouns and names and stuff and retaining any of that. And I sincerely did not remember Clara's name. I just remembered Marco's mom. So yeah, that's how I rediscovered it, was reading this issue and taking notes. But Clara is saying Sankta Feck in response to him introducing.
Oh, do you have
Alana.
Translations for us?
Oh, I do. But can you guess what Sankta Feck means?
What the fuck?
Very close. Which it'll make sense once you hear it. It's holy fuck.
Oh, yeah.
Sankta Feck. So there you go.
Yeah.
Again, great podcast name. We really blinked it up. Sankta Feck. That might be that's definitely gonna be the episode title for this one. So yeah, I love immediately. Oh, one thing you didn't mention, he puts on the crash helm, but he also, to open the portal, he uses a big gold axe and just slashes a portal into the air, and it is so badass. And I just want certain scenes made into live action, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't want the whole adaptation. I just want to see certain things in live action that are so rad.
I love Clara and Bar's whole like costuming too. Like they're wearing kind of this golden body armor, and the crash helms. Like Clara's has armor for her horns, which is super cool. Like just the whole design of it is very kind of slick.
Yeah. It makes me think that like this armor has been in the families for generations and stuff, especially since you'll notice that she has the hilt of the broken sword that Marco broke to get into the rocket ship tree, and it's the same gold as her outfit, and it matches. So
that's
I'm
true.
guessing it was a set at one point. But also, again, notice how the panels get really tall when Marco slashes the blade down, creating that top to bottom movement of your eye to give that swing some more weight.
And even to the point too where in the panel before he swings, his axe is up and it's creating a diagonal line upwards and inwards to the peak that he then slashes down. That kind of motion is just so brilliant.
Yeah. Also in that same panel where he's holding up the axe, he says, in response to his mom saying, "You don't know the first thing about using a crash helm," he says, "You have no idea what I know."
Yeah.
Which is the most, he's just a teenager ass son now.
So once they both jump in the portal, there's this amazing panel with the portal like starting to fizzle and Bar and Alana just kind of staring at each other, and then Alana's, "Cool, so glad I got to do all this in a towel." Alana remains hilarious.
Yeah, and I love that tiny illustration of Bar there. Just that awkward just that subtle double chin there of just like I don't want to be here. It's a really good scene. And yeah, he gets tied up in vines, which might have a callback to a thing.
The other thing that I wanted to talk about is just as they're walking through the ship, we get to experience a bit more the inside of the rocket ship tree, and it's so cool. There's like glowing funguses growing on the wall, and they walk into a room that is basically a jungle with more glowing mushrooms.
Yeah.
It's just so cool.
I would live here so immediately.
And then in the dialogue, they're constantly reminding you that this is inside of a ship.
It's rad. Let's live here.
Okay, we'll move there. I wonder how the acoustics are. Probably better than my office.
I'll add that goal to the Patreon really quick. Give us a tree ship. And is there anything else you want to talk about in that scene? Or we cool to move on to the big old money shot on this one?
I think we're good to keep going to meet our good friend Fard.
Okay, so we get an establishing shot down on the planet that Marco and Clara just crash helm to, and keep that establishing shot in mind because I very much want to talk about that. But
yeah,
Marco starts calling out for Isabel. Clara says, keep quiet because you don't know what. Well, first of all, it's ruins, by the way, the planet. It's just all stone ruins, the entire planet. Clara says, you don't know what did a number on this place. And they immediately get into an argument, obviously. Her saying that, just pretty much taunting him about turning out he's, thought you were some great warrior. And then he desecrated the family's oldest weapon, and it was to save his family. And
calls Alana his concubine.
Yeah, and actually, she mentions that they were first, made aware of something happening with him when a bounty hunter came and asked about him, which is interesting. And then she reveals that she thought he had been kidnapped, and so they bought these crash helms, and he asks how they afforded them, and she said, we sold the house. And he says, no, how could you be so stupid? And she slaps him very hard in the face.
Yeah.
And so it's getting real emotional here. She says, we all make mistakes, Marco. The trick is learning how to move on. He says Alana is not a mistake. And she says, no, she's just the kind of misguided rebelliousness you should have outgrown 20 years ago. It's your offspring that's the real. And then he tackles her, and they barely miss a giant bone, still covered in some flesh, destroying the ground where they were just standing with a massive crackoom. And then they're on the ground, and Marco is stopping Clara from looking up to see what just attacked them, saying, trust me, you don't want to see it. And the only way I can describe this next splash with the reveal of what just attacked him.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how you describe Fard.
Yeah. So it's like, how you take out your phone to take a picture, but instead of the back camera coming on, it's the face camera. and you're just totally unprepared for it, and you got the big double chin, and they're just like, oh God. That's what I look like right now. That's Fard. He is a giant, hideous, I guess, triclops.
Does that make us biclopses?
Yeah. That's what I always put on my resumes. and he's, I'd say one of his more notable features is that he's totally naked and has the largest ball sack covered in God knows what. Yeah, and a micro penis.
I will have you know that that's a chode. That's the definition of a chode.
And so he's choding real hard on this one, and we get the tiny little Marco and Clara at the bottom, and Marco says, "Mother, please," as in, please do not look at this. He is embarrassed for her.
I relate to Marco because anytime I read this scene, I'm like, I don't want my parents to read this comic.
Yeah. Again, this was I so distinctly remember seeing this for the first time, and that was back when the surprises of Saga were so fresh and so crazy, and I was just so blown away by this being in a comic at all.
I'm still kind of surprised that it exists.
I've become depressingly desensitized to it, but I just have so much. It's been replaced by joy. Yeah,
I do love Fard.
So yeah, this is a scene that sticks with you. I wonder why.
But you before we get too deep into Fard, you wanted to discuss the landscape.
You're really giving me a lot of options for episode names on this one. So yeah, this is one of my favorite little details in this whole in this issue. Is that establishing shot of the ruined the planet that is all ruins? Remember that we saw it from space, and it looked like the surface was breaking apart. But on the ground, those bits that are broken up have taken the shape of clouds and are hovering, floating like clouds. But they are clearly, when you inspect them a bit further, they are rocks that are shaped like clouds just floating around the planet. It is such a cool detail, and again, so pitch perfect for a whole planet that is just ruins. And yeah, it is. Oh my, you motherfuckers, stop it. It's too, you're making fiction bad for everyone else. This is too good. I'm angry now.
The whole like the whole kind of scenery. I'm a sucker for post-apocalyptic landscapes too. So the whole planet that looks like these it looks almost like Roman ruins or something like that. And it's all, again, just like the color palette is so like beautiful,
Yeah.
and apocalyptic.
How would you describe this palette?
Like a rusty sunset.
Yeah, definitely rust. A lot of rust again, but it's still stone. But it's
Yeah.
and you got those long shadows. So yeah, it's like that sunset aesthetic. It's such cool design, and unlike anything we've seen yet, and it makes me so excited that we're finally getting to other planets.
And yeah, I love that we're getting to see more landscapes. And then I also love, it's really interesting. We see Marco arriving on the planet, and just like the kind of strokes that Fiona Staples uses when he arrives, these kind of wispy, ethereal brush strokes that almost look like he's like surrounded in flame, and they're like a real contrast to these kind of sharp angles of the landscape. It's really cool.
Yeah. And also they're so good about no characters ever blending into the background. Like the fact that this is such a distinct color palette, it's like specifically sort of like sort of a rusty pink and like a brown gray for most of the backgrounds, and then both of the characters both match the backgrounds well, so that it's not harsh on the eyes, but they also are distinct from it and distinct from each other, with Clara in the gold and orange and Marco in the green, and it works so well. Oh my gosh. And the pink of the ball sack. It's beautiful.
I mean, you're completely right is the thing. You're joking, but you're completely
it really
right.
does match fantastically. But one thing we're going to really get in the weeds on this one with comics creation, production. But this is something that I'm just so impressed by. And it really stuck out to me in this scene in how much it did not stick out at all. And it is so effortless. And it is this thing when you're making a comic as a writer and as an artist. Oh, and I just said artist. We're just gonna start the podcast over really quick.
All right, from the top. All right.
Hey, gals, guys, and otherwise, I'm an artist. Fuck. God damn it. So as a writer and as an artist, you have to keep in mind the balloon placement, and specifically the order in which you are reading the balloons and where those balloons are going to go based on who's talking. So in the perfect world, you will have whoever's talking first on the left side of the panel and whoever's talking second on the right side of the panel. That way you read from left to right like humans do, or well, I guess Westerners do. But the really difficult thing with that is that then you have to figure out with each panel, it's going to be a back and forth, and it gets very boring if you just have that same composition and that same back and forth every panel. So you have to mix that up. But also, if you have the person on the left talking or on the right talking first, and then the person on the left, then you have the issue of, well, you can't break that 180 line and have them swap places, or else it's going to be jarring and hard to follow. And you have to come up with different ways to handle that. So for the people out there who have the book, I would very much recommend.
By the way, also I think we should describe the 180 degree rule to people who might not know it.
Yeah. So very simply, it is just it's actually from cinematography, but it very much applies to comics, and it is that if one person is on the left side of a scene and one person's on the right side, keep them on their same sides. As you can move the camera within 180 degrees from their sides, their two sides, as long as the person on the left is staying on the left throughout the scene and the person on the right is staying on the right in all the shots, because then it gets so visually disorienting if they just swap sides. There are absolutely ways to break that rule effectively. Kubrick does it a lot in like The Shining and stuff, and it's great. But if you just want just a very easy to follow scene, then you keep the person who's on the left throughout the scene.
And fun fact, this is why whenever you watch sports games, they're always shot from the same side. Arenas have camera hookups, or stadiums, for those of you who play American hockey or whatever your sports are called.
We call it soccer here.
Have stadium setups where the cameras are on one side, because you're cutting between these cameras to track the action. And if it switched, suddenly it would feel like one team was going the other way, and that would be very disorienting. I've always thought that when they taught me in journalism school about the 180 degree rule, that's what they used, and I found it a really good example to show why this is necessary.
Yeah. That can get so complicated with comics, and usually it ends up falling on the letterer, Haley, the behind the scenes. I'll call her engineer Haley on this one. Haley is also a letterer, comics letterer, and there have been so many times where artists who are new to comics just, place characters wherever and don't even factor in who's talking in what order. And then you have to have the balloons above the characters, because in your brain, you've been spoiled by good comics like Saga to where you think, oh, the balloon's on the left side, so it's the person on the left talking. And then you don't always have to follow the tail of the balloon. But then, so when you get that screwed up, like whoever's talking second is on the left side, then you have to like cross over the tails, or have the tail be like super long and extended around the other balloon and stuff, and it's such a pain. And so if you go and look through this scene, I don't know who is paying attention to it more, if it's Brian K. Vaughan or Fiona Staples, but the way that it is set up to where there's even a point where we actually swap the 180 line, but it is hidden by a page turn and a single shot of Clara. And it is clearly, it even simulates a sort of camera movement where it is now shooting from the side of them instead of like behind them before. And so it is so natural and so seamless, and it totally coincides with who is talking first in every panel, because now Clara is talking first in a lot of the panels, so now she's on the left, and it is so effortlessly done. And no joke, it is one of the hardest things to keep track of and pull off just at all successfully in comics. And it's usually a lot of problem solving and fixing in post, but this is just so perfectly done.
And I think this is one of the many, many reasons why Saga is such a good comic for people who aren't comics readers, because these things just flow naturally, and it just feels it's good design. It's 99% invisible, right? Like, hey, Roman Mars, come on our show. But this is a thing where when you're reading comics, and you're not used to reading comics, you might find yourself kind of lost in the dialogue. And another thing too, kind of related to this, Saga is super kind of by the books and not experimental with its panels and its gutters and things like that. And that goes in well with this, where it just becomes really easy to follow the story and to follow what characters are saying and doing. And the fact that you don't need that effort means you can understand the text better and just plow through it like people usually do on their first Saga read.
Yeah. Honestly, this book is just it is complex characters and complex emotions, but the simplest, most straightforward, easy to read layout possible. And it absolutely had to have been engineered that way, because you don't do this by accident. It is taking so many lessons from just the psychology of comics and applying every single one of them to this book.
Yeah.
To the point that once we have that 180 line swap of Clara on the left, then when she slaps Marco, we get that left to right action that, again, your brain, just because you like reading left to right, your brain likes looking at action moving from left to right. And so it is just... so much is happening here.
And then even with the action too, she does that and she's on the left of Marco. Then she turns her back and Marco dives to get her out of the way. So now, again, left to right action in this dive, but Marco is the one on the left.
Yeah. And then we get that left to right reveal of like the bone has hit the ground, and then the reveal that they're okay beside it. And yeah, it is just so well done.
I also love, and this is something that you can do really well with the way that Fiona Staples does her backgrounds versus her characters, where her characters almost sometimes in like an old school animation way, right? Where they're like so clearly not blended in with the background. What you get is when you have the bone hitting and you have these chunks of the land, like chunks of the landscape coming up and suddenly they're in focus. It feels almost like 3D.
Yeah. Also the good lettering on Phonographic's end, having it behind some chunks of the ground there.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah, like it really feels like it's popping in this scene.
Yeah. And then we got some balls.
And we do have some majestic balls.
We just got some big old balls on this one. Is there anything you'd like to say about the balls, Noah?
Well, when you're not gazing from the balls, beautiful landscape behind. Just gorgeous. You see more of the floating cracks.
I mean, if anything, they're a framing device for the landscape.
About the balls themselves, I mean, I just love how vulgar Saga is and how it's unabashedly vulgar. Like, not only in a sexual way. It shows that nudity is not... is not always a sexy thing.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. Like, and just like,
is this specifically, this is an example of it being okay? That's how you would describe this?
There's no reason why this giant should be or has to be wearing clothes. And it's such a visceral impact.
That's the thing. Can you imagine? It makes more sense for giants to be naked, because can you imagine the resources it would take to clothe, even put some underwear on, I mean, you also could contain
those balls. They hang low and heavy.
Yeah. I don't even like, you're going to need some heavy duty Hanes for that one. And it's a feat unto itself. And who does he have a bunch of small friends that he can get to design these for him? How is he going to pay them for their services? None of it makes sense.
This is a post-apocalyptic wasteland. The textile industry cannot be flourishing.
Oh boy. So yeah, it all adds up. No plot holes here.
So I think it's my scene now.
Yeah, it sure is. You got a short one. You got a 2-pager.
Thank God. So we get some Hazel voiceover that says, "We are small, but the universe is not." And we see Fiona Staples' space, which is the best version of space, with a little blue thingy growing. And then it becomes evident that that's some kind of like warp portal that the ship jumps out of. And the ship is the Stalk's Dragon Skull ship, which has now been commandeered by our good friend Prince Robot IV.
Canon.
So 4 is sitting in the cockpit of this ship. He's got red glow around. He's got static on his face, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Then we cut. I guess I'll do. Yeah, I guess I'll do this one too, because it's also just one page.
Yeah.
So wait, I need to turn back. What do we say to transition to this? So basically, Hazel is saying as long as they kept moving, their pursuers would have little chance of finding them. Sooner or later, they'd have to give up. And then we turn the page and get that was the hope, at least. And we're at another place in space with an Earth-like planet that has 2 rings around it. We see a beach with lion cats snarling at a lobster. Hey, I'm lying here. And the onion ship. And then we get the Will looking very sad, looking at old sex tapes that he made with the stock. And I think that's the scene.
Yeah, so many little details in this little montage that I love. I love that the will just copes with death by watching sex tapes of the person who died.
Yeah.
I love that that planet that we see that the will is on. I love that it looks like Earth, except all the land masses are white, as if it's just entirely like a beach planet.
Yeah.
Which, yes, please.
I also love the framing of both of these it's very kind of traditional film setting, which is I think part of the reason it feels cinematic. You have wide establishing shot, then you have medium shot, then you have a character shot. So it's space, then the ship, then robot, space, then the ship on the beach with Lion Cat in the foreground, then the horny sad Will.
Yeah, and then both of those followed by close-ups too.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it creates a great montage effect of we're moving closer and closer and closer the whole time.
Yeah, and that's like film 101.
Now I'm going to present to you the greatest mystery that this book has to offer.
Okay.
Noah, and it's going to blow your mind.
The RCA cables?
No, that's also great. But the will has one shoe off in this scene. Why, Noah?
Because
I'm so amazed by this detail. I'm so fascinated.
His shoes were undone, but he hadn't taken them off yet. And then he took his leg, put it on his knee, and his shoe kind of dangled off as it does. And so he just kind of shook that one off, but he's still too lazy to take the other one off.
That is a fantastic answer. But you're wrong.
This is the kind of in-depth analysis you come here for.
This is honestly when I was writing this down, I was like, this is my one thing I'm contributing this issue. Just pointing out that he's just sitting cross-legged and his in one shoe is
I love how you have this whole like incredible 5-minute explanation of the 180 rule in comics and stuff, and you're like, all I'm contributing is the one shoe.
It's all I care about, though. You can find out. So many people know the 180. I don't have one. You know what? I'm calling it now.
The answer.
If only we could ask the audience somehow what they think is the explanation for this.
Is this gonna be okay?
Oh well, I guess we'll find out. And then that's that scene. Also, I just love the little lion cat. That moment of lion cat hissing at a little lobster crab thing, trying to nip at her. Her.
All right.
By the way.
Her. Yes.
And then we reach our final scene. And the voiceover, we're back to the rocket ship flying through space. Somehow every shot of this rocket ship tree is, as many times as we get it as an establishing shot, it is just gorgeous regardless. Which again, okay, I'm not going to get it. I'll save it. I'll save it for the actual wrap up. But we see the rocket ship flying through space again. And the voiceover continues, still, for all the royal automatons and deranged mercenaries out there, only one thing can really destroy a family. And we all know what that is, right?
Alana eating a tangerine.
And then it's Alana eating a tangerine. We'll talk about this. Another mystery for the ages. And Alana and Bar are having a conversation. It turns out that this jungly room is sort of the kitchen where it grows all the food, which is rad. There's even a little countertop. And Bar's asking to be let down, and Alana says, or he says, I can get out of these vines. And Alana says, hey, we've been in this situation before, and I know that you need a secret to break those vines. Because if you'll remember back to issue 2, that they were stuck in the vines.
Yeah, that early.
And he says, and you don't think I have secrets of my own? And she says, like what? You're wearing men's underwear beneath that snazzy skirt? and then Bar says in blue, I have less than a month to live. And then the vines ignite and break beneath him. And Alana is sort of just flabbergasted. He says, don't worry, it's not contagious, but it is spell resistant. Final stage, my cleric wrote, which is great.
I love that, yeah.
And Alana points out that apparently his wife didn't even know, since it's a secret. And in mid-sentence, Bar casts a sleep spell with some blue powder, throws it in Alana's face, and she says, "No, please don't hurt Hazel," as she's passing out. He says, "Hazel, eh?" as he grabs the baby from her arms while she's falling. And then we get our final splash.
What a good splash.
Very good, where Alana's asleep on the ground, and Bar's looking down at his granddaughter and says, "Beautiful goddamn name." And it's a bird's eye view shot, and it's gorgeous. Yeah. And that's the end of our issue. And it's a good one.
Ooh, it is a good one.
I'm just gonna sit here real quick. We might have to do 2 questions, as much as I hate to do it, because first of all,
well, do we want to discuss the scene before we get to the question?
No. I'm just saying. Well, at the beginning of the scene, we all know what can really destroy a family. Hey, Noah, what can really, is it tangerine sex? Because she's really nomming on that thing.
It's that can really destroy a family.
Like the juice is running down her chin.
It's very erotic.
Like, is it the sickness that her father or the father has? What's destroying the family here? I feel stupid for this one.
Destroying the family is erotically eating fruit in front of your father-in-law. That's what destroys families.
That checks out. That 100% checks out. I cannot tell you how many times my family has been ravaged by my erotically eating fruits. But yeah, it's again just another mystery for the ages. There's so much. This is like an episode of Lost. This issue.
Oh yeah.
The shoe conspiracy, the tangerine death of the family. But yeah, I love this. It feels like we're just getting nothing but classic Saga in this one. I love that we still get the appearance by Will and Prince Robot. But we got the gross, disgusting, absurd character design out of the way. We get the big plot twist and character-based plot twist out of the way, and it's just a dang solid classic Saga experience. A+ is what I'm saying.
One thing that I really wanted to mention is just I love the way that when he says I have less than a month to live in language, not in blue. That's what they have discussed this, so that's what I'm gonna call the difference. So basically in English, but the lettering is in blue because he's spell casting with it, which is so cool.
Yeah. Again, Stephen Finch? Phonographics. Killing it as always. But I'm just gonna point out here, and you know what? I'm just gonna call it now because we're already in the moment. Favorite moment of this issue is the fact that, first of all, when reading that earlier scene, it didn't even occur to me that we would have the callback that we had already been set up the whole how to get out of vines. 6 issues ago.
Yeah.
And the fact that like it came up again organically, and again, I was already crazy about the whole the magic thing being you have to tell a secret to get out of vines, and how great that is just writing wise and plot wise.
Well, also, is it just vines? Is it being bound? What is it? It could be ton of things.
But it was so brilliantly set up. And one of my favorite things in the world, I think J.J. Abrams used the example of Die Hard, the beginning of Die Hard, and as setup that you have no idea is set up is honestly something I'm so obsessed with as a writer. It is my fucking the blood coursing through my veins is set up that you don't know is set up. And the example that J.J. Abrams used was in Die Hard, the guy at the beginning of the thing when John McClane is nervous to fly on the plane, the guy says, "Oh, well, take off your shoes and socks and stand on a carpet and make fists with your toes, and it'll get you over your any stress. It's very relaxing. And then he goes, like, there's a scene where he's, left alone at the party in the bathroom after having an argument with his wife, and he does that, and he's like, son of a bitch. Like, it worked. And it's just this great little moment, character moment. And then you don't realize until halfway through the movie, it was just an excuse for him to be barefoot.
For him not to,
yeah, so that he has to run through glass later. And it is, again, just like, there's nothing I love more. Hot Fuzz is nothing but this, where it's a ton of setup for future jokes that you have no idea they're setting up. And it's just, when that's done so effortlessly, is so impressive to me. And I fucking love that I had no idea that the vines in the kitchen were going to, it didn't even occur to me that he was going to have to tell a secret to get out of it. So that setup was already great. But already, I didn't know if he was planning on using it in this scene and that he went back and set it up in issue 2 or whatever. But just such an organic callback to this existing, we're already getting into that existing world building and the spell casting and everything, to where he's having this sort of, instead of just making up everything whole cloth, he's now able to start picking from the established things to move the plot forward. And it works so dang well. It's a good book.
It's a fantastic book.
In summary.
We should make a podcast about it.
Oh, yeah. In summary, it's a good book.
I think my favorite moment, it's got to be Fard.
Yeah.
It was always Fard.
How romantic.
It was always Fard.
Anything
and
else?
Just generally the apocalyptic planet. I love apocalypses, and I think this is such a good apocalyptic planet.
Here's your teaser to get you back for the next episode. Everything on this planet is the coolest.
The best thing ever.
It's great. I love it.
Yeah, we're like a couple issues away from what may be my favorite moment of the entire series.
It's not something you get in anything else. It is so purely Saga. It's beautiful.
So one thing that someone brought up that I'm trying to think if I have an answer for. Do you have a song that you would apply to this issue?
Oh yeah. I'm gonna go with a wonderful AC/DC early hit of theirs, Big Balls.
Big
The one time that reference will be useful in my entire life.
That was amazing. How long were you sitting on that one?
Oh, my big balls.
Yeah, how long were you sitting on your big balls?
I literally right before the podcast, I was like, oh shit, I gotta come up with a song. And just a heads up, because people are asking for this because fucking Polyphonic is on this podcast. They don't give a shit about, they're not gonna listen to what I say. So mine will be purely an excuse for jokes. So look forward to that. Do you have a suggestion of something that feels like it would fit this tone well?
I mean, there's a lot of tones within this is the thing. I feel like the apocalyptic setting, especially when they're walking around, is very Godspeed You Black Emperor. That's a band, by the way, if you listening don't know. Maybe like Dead Flag Blues or something like that. But I'm trying to think of something like, I don't know, it's an episode about parents, a song that's parenty, but not necessarily in a good way. Maybe Mother by Pink Floyd.
Father and Son by Cat Stevens. The only two people that don't interact this episode.
I think Mother by Pink Floyd, actually. The more I think about it, too.
I like it.
I mean, it's not that Clara was an overprotective mother, but the themes of kind of childhood indoctrination from your mother playing out across your adult life is very interesting and very relevant to this comic, I would say.
That's an actually good suggestion. Thank you for that.
So what's the question of the week?
Hold on.
No?
I'm legally obligated to not tell you until we play this.
So close. So close.
This theme song. Why is that so hard to say?
This theme song.
This theme song. There we go. What a good song. That's a good song.
Great song. We make that joke every time, and it lands none of the times.
If you want to link to that song, go head over to @WatchPolyphonic on Instagram, and we'll hook you up. Only the same jokes forever. Only 8 episodes in. So, this is what I'm fascinated by is what's the shoe? Why is the shoe off? Hey, why is the shoe off?
I explained to you why the shoe's off. I answered this question.
Yeah, but this is so open. This is purposely ambiguous. This is America. This is like the end of Inception.
Oh yeah. This is the top.
And I want to hear everyone else's interpretations of this. Just there's endless layers. There's a million variables. Does he have a foot fetish, but his own from the side? So yeah, you tell me.
You ask really deep
please,
questions, Jonathan.
Why is the shoe off? Do we have any other questions you want to throw out there?
Well, you went with why is the shoe off?
Mm-hmm.
I think this is not quite as heavy as that.
It does look like a big boot.
We open with a formative moment from Marco's childhood. What's a formative moment from your childhood, for better or for worse?
There we go. We're delving into the souls of these people.
It's not quite as good as the shoe question, but
oh yeah, I'm gonna say that's the optional backup question. But if you're gonna answer anything, you have to answer the shoe question.
Especially what's a formative moment that you see part of in Saga, or that you see. Yeah, that you see in Saga, because I think that's a little more on topic.
In plain language, give me one question. For the love of... I just posted the one that is 6 questions. When in your childhood were you abused by shoes? No, we'll boil that down to a second question. So it's formative that might be reflected in the first 7 issues of Saga.
Yeah.
All right, I dig it. So that's our question of the week's questions of the week. Boy, pluralization. I'm gonna say that we don't have anything else to talk about, because I want to wrap this up because we just hit an hour.
I think we're good.
So read next issue 8. We're gonna get more of Amazing Rock Ball Planet, and we're if you want to listen to the next one right away, and you're listening to this on the public channel, check out patreon.com/makestuffstudios. You'll get to listen to that next episode right this second. So go for that. Hey, where can they find you?
They can find me at Watch Polyphonic on Instagram.
There you go.
Or more accurately.
Nope.
You can find me on
nothing else.
You can find me on Watch Polyphonic on Twitter,
all right,
or on YouTube. I released a video this week about the Who and Eminence Front, which I also need to say I got probably my favorite comment I've ever gotten. The video is called Eminence Front, the Who's last great song, and someone said in the comments with an asterisk, whom?
That is a good one.
Yeah. But yeah, go check it out. Find out why cocaine is bad for you.
Finally. Don't pressure me. No, I can do whatever the fuck I want. This is how I get this big energy for this show. It's so dang entertaining. Hey, follow me at Jonathan Oscar, JohnAthon on Twitter. YouTube.com/MakeStuffStudios. Lots of good stuff there. And Horns and Wings, if you want to answer that question of the week, best place to do it is reply to the pinned comment of the YouTube video version of this podcast, or go over to @Horns and Wings on Twitter. Our pinned comment on there will be the question of the week. Reply to that. Those are the 2 ways to do it. Or you can email us at Horns and Wings, or it's hornsandwingspod@gmail.com. If you really want to do that, you can do it. I don't give a shit. At Horns and Wings Pod on Instagram is a good one. Subscribe, leave a review on we're on all the podcasts. All of it helps. You're all great. I love you all to death. Don't forget to answer the question of the week. And thank you to Fiona Staples, Brian K. Vaughan, Phonographics, and Image Comics for making the best dang comic in the dang goddamn universe. And you know what? We have asked such a deep question with why is the shoe off?
Am I shitting?
Do you want to hit him with?
Am I shitting? I'm just gonna cut you off.
There it is. There it is. Bye.